You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday, 26th of January 2015. Thought for the day, Nationalists and Islam, but not together. 3 underage girls fled West Midlands hotel in underwear before police child sex raid. UK's Green Party leader, people should not be banned from joining ISIS or Al-Qaeda. Muslim gang receive ASBO to protect the public. Afghanistani migrant who had sex with a 13-year-old girl claims he thought it was a cultural norm in the UK. Baroness Warsi says government is not doing enough to reduce trust deficit with Muslims. Greece has a new government as Syriza forms coalition with right-wing independent Greeks. Golden Dawn fights for 3rd place in Greek elections. Obama on Russia, large countries don't bully. US troops heading to Middle East to train Syria rebels so they can join ISIS. And finally, 2 for One Day Monday. I have just 2 short messages today before the news. Firstly, many thanks to all our listeners who, for one, still listen even though we are sightless and send in comments. They are appreciated. Secondly, and here I'm harking back to last year's debacle on the World at 8 leaving the BNP site shortly before the entire South East office left the party. It came to my ears somewhat late that for one reason for the news sudden departure from the main party site was down to money, shekels, lolly, etc. Of course, it wasn't in reality. It was down to the vicious interference we got from dictates still up north in situ, and the sentiment when Chris Barnett was questioned, he was told to say that we were bought and paid for. It was also spread around that we, the World at 8, were not value for money, which is rather alarming as the BNP has never invested to any reasonable extent either the time, publicity or large sums of money into the news. In fact, that sentiment is all the more odd as beneath every World at 8 programme that went out on the BNP site 3 times a week then, the message below would read in essence, if you like this programme, donate some money towards the running costs. I'm going to say no more. UK news. 3 underage girls fled hotel West Midlands in underwear before police child sex raid. Officers were called to the Birmingham Hotel in Small Heath, West Midlands, after staff reported fears that youngsters were in a room with adult men. 3 suspected underage girls fled a hotel in their underwear shortly before police swooped in response to a child sex tip-off. By the time the police arrived, they found a 17-year-old in the room who claimed she'd been assaulted. A man was later arrested, but no charges followed. Yet police say CCTV camera footage showed 3 young girls earlier running away from the same room in their underwear. Despite inquiries, they've never been traced. The potential child sexual exploitation CSE incident took place in September. The police swoop took place in September after tip-off from a member of staff at the hotel. World at 8. There we have it, a reported crime and no charges. At $1 the men were Muslim and the girls were of course vulnerable village idiots of the white variety. When, I ask myself, when? UK's Green Party leader, people should not be banned from joining ISIS or Al-Qaeda. Simply joining or belonging to a group such as the Islamic State, ISIS, or Al-Qaeda or the IRA is not a crime because people should not be punished for what they think, the UK's Green Party leader Natalie Bennett said on BBC's Sunday Politics, stirring a controversy immediately. She said that the legislation that made it a crime to simply belong to a certain organisation was outdated and that it was important for Western countries to defend freedom of speech, which apparently includes the freedom to join or belong to terrorist organisations. She made those comments during an interview when she was asked whether the Green Party policy was justified. She said that just belonging to a terrorist organisation or showing sympathy with its objectives or aims should not be a crime in itself, unless the individuals in actual fact are involved in a crime. What we want to do is to make sure we are not punishing people for what they think or what they believe, she said in her controversial justification. Obviously actions of inciting violence, supporting violence, those are absolutely unacceptable, illegal and should be pursued to the full extent of the law. What we are talking about is the principle that we shouldn't be punished for what you think, and we need to balance. We do not need to protect freedom by destroying it. She added, "Well, to date, I bet she would change her tune if applied to patriotic or nationalist parties, which of course it does. I am a tree hugger, but not totally devoid of sense. This woman is just begging for the Muslim and ethnic vote this year, which might be difficult as Muslims cannot stand dogs or animals in general, and other ethnics certainly don't appreciate the lovely countryside we have." Muslim gang receive ASBO to protect the public. A gang of Muslim men have been served with a 3-year antisocial behaviour order to protect the public. 12 men from Luton and Walthamstow, East London, have been banned from gathering in large groups after they were involved in violent outbursts at a rally led by radical hate preacher Anjem Choudhury. 8 of the men have had restrictions imposed on their activities when attending a dawah, a public event where Islam is preached, while 4 of the men have also been banned from carrying flags or setting fire to items in protest. The 12 men named in the orders are Munim Abdul, 33, Mohanuddin, 37, Mohammed Al-Mgar, 35, Kamran Khan, 30, Qadir Ahmed, 29, Mohammed Nasir Khan, 31, Moshe Rahman, 32, Jalal Ahmed, 26, Yusuf Bashir, 34, and Mirza Ali, 40, Abdul Aziz, 32, and Jordan Horner, 21. Well, to date. Oh, I can think of worse punishments than that. Their families should be fined as our parents are fined if they take their kids out of school. Another way of getting immigrant families to pay back what they've taken. Afghanistani migrant who had sex with 13-year-old girl claims he thought it was a cultural norm in UK. Married father Zia Maroof Kyle, 29, carefully groomed the victim and fooled her into believing they were boyfriend and girlfriend. After spotting her in a park, he made repeated approaches, and the first time they spoke, he told her he loved her, Preston Crown Court heard. Kyle, originally from Afghanistan, persuaded her to meet him at his home twice a week, said Mark Lamberty, prosecuting. He sexually abused her there and had sex with her in an alleyway and at her own home. He was abusive to her if she refused to cooperate in sexual contact, Mr Lamberty added. His sex crime came to light when the girl made a complaint about other men who had abused her. Police tracked Kyle down using DNA evidence which matched his on a database at Colnbrook Immigration Centre, Heathrow, where he was waiting to be deported. He told officers he did not think he'd done anything wrong because he was not aware of the cultural norms in Britain. Kyle was found guilty last week of 4 counts of sexual activity with a child and was sentenced to 8 years jail and 3 further years free on licence. He may also face deportation. In a statement, the victim's mother said her daughter had been left traumatised by her ordeal. World at 8. He should have been deported immediately, not serving 8 years with numerous other Muslims all banded together in prison. He'll be home from home. Deportation should be the norm, not a threat never carried out. He and his family should be made to pay a nice sum of money to the parents of the child he abused. That is what he would have to do under Islamic law. Baroness Warsi says government is not doing enough to reduce trust deficit with Muslims. The government views Muslims and the Islamic organisations in Britain with suspicion and has failed to connect with them, a former Conservative Party chairman has said. Baroness Warsi, who quit her position in government last August over its response to the 50-day war in Gaza during the summer, which she deemed morally indefensible, has criticised what she called a policy of non-engagement with nearly 3 million British Muslims. The former Foreign Office Minister and first female Muslim member of the Cabinet, writing in The Observer, spoke about a letter written to leaders of 1,000 mosques and organisations by Communities Secretary Eric Pickles, in which he urged them to do more to root out extremism in the wake of the Paris attacks that killed 17 people. The letter was condemned by the Ramadan Foundation as patronising and factually incorrect, and the Muslim Council of Britain said that it gave the idea that Islam is inherently separate from British society. Oh, fail that. Lady Warsi said that she argued for more engagement by government to reach out to a broad range of people or groups who purported to speak for the British Muslim community, while accepting that, inevitably, some didn't do it very well. She said there had been a failure to tackle Islamophobic language and hate crimes and described the current climate within the Muslim community as one of worry and fear. Oh, good. So it's no surprise there is a trust deficit, a questioning of motive to a letter sent with the best intentions. For too many, the hand of friendship felt like an admonitory finger that was once again pointing at Britain's Muslims, she added. Lady Warsi also said it was sad that her calls for a meeting, similar to the annual one the Prime Minister has with the Jewish Leadership Council, with members of other major faith communities, has not been answered. World at 8. One look at Warsi and my distrust of Muslims soars up to around 110%. I don't know about you. European news. Greece has a new government as Syriza forms coalition with right-wing independent Greeks. Greeks' left-wing elections victors, Syriza, have formed a coalition with the right-wing independent Greeks to build a new government. It took less than an hour of talks this morning for an alliance to be struck, with the groups bridging their numerous differences in a shared opposition to austerity measures enforced by the EU. The leader of Syriza, Alexis Tsipras, will be its Prime Minister and is expected to appoint his cabinet later today when he submits the names to President Karolis Papoulias. The combination of Syriza's 149 MPs and the independent Greeks group of 13 will give the government a slim majority of 162 seats out of 300. It narrowly missed out on a majority on the Greek parliament, but beat current Prime Minister Antonis Samaras' Conservative coalition into second place and the Golden Dawn into third. World at 8. Europe is supposedly shocked by the left's win. Why? They've done everything they can do to ruin Golden Dawn Party, who still came third, and the independent Greek party is relatively right-wing, so the left has had a hollow victory. Golden Dawn fights for a third place in Greek elections. Golden Dawn Party appears headed for a third place finish in the election. Its showing comes despite the fact that the party's leader and most of its MPs are behind bars, facing charges of participating in a criminal organisation accused of murders, brutal attacks on migrants and others, extortion and arson. With more than 90% of the voting precincts reporting, Golden Dawn was receiving 6.3% of the vote, narrowly leading the centrist Potami River with 6.04%. Both parties exceeded the 3% minimum required to gain seats in the 300-member parliament, with each forecast to win 17 seats. Its share of the vote does not match the 9.39% it received in last June's European Parliament election, in which Golden Dawn also finished third. It also trails the 6.92% won in the previous national election in June 2012. But considering the exposure of a series of crimes allegedly committed by its members, including the September 2013 murder of leftist rapper Pavlos Fysis, the result obtained yesterday may be even more significant. This is no longer merely an angry protest vote, a one-off voters' tiff with corrupt politicians. This is an established vote and a hardened electorate. Golden Dawn leader Nikos Miliakos and his senior lieutenants were not free to campaign ahead of the election since they were behind bars. They were free to stand as candidates because they have not yet gone to trial. Some of them, including Miliakos, may soon be set free when their 18-month maximum pre-trial detention limit is reached. In a taped statement yesterday, Miliakos celebrated his party's performance. "We have a fresh mandate. Everyone fought to keep Golden Dawn away and they lost. Golden Dawn won." World at 8. He is right, and the establishment have shot 3 Golden Dawn members, which they haven't done to the lefties. Golden Dawn rules. World news. Obama on Russia. Large countries don't bully. The military option is out, President Barack Obama said Sunday, but the US will be looking at all other options to ratchet up the pressure on Russia on the issue of Ukraine. "We have no interest in seeing Russia weakened or its economy in shambles. We have a profound interest, as I believe every country does, in promoting a core principle, which is large countries don't bully smaller countries," Obama told reporters. Speaking in New Delhi after a lengthy flight on Air Force One, Obama said Sunday he will look at all the additional options that are available to us short of military confrontation. On Monday, Obama will be the first US leader to headline India's annual Republic Day parade, a colourful military spectacle featuring marching bands, dancing and a lot of heavy machinery rolling down the stately Rajpath Boulevard. The parade will be a reminder of the decades of sometimes tense relations between India and the USA and the US. A military demonstration at heart, the vehicles and equipment parading before Obama will be mostly Russian-made, a vestige of India's stance during the Cold War. Russia remains India's largest supplier of weapons, and while their share is steadily decreasing, Russian military imports still amount to 3/4 of India's stockpile. With the US-Russian relations worsening to Cold War levels, Obama hopes to balance Moscow's influence in India during his visit this week. His visit comes a day after city officials in Mariupol, Ukraine, said shelling in southeastern Ukraine killed at least 30 people, including 2 children. Another 102 people were injured, at least 75 of whom needed hospital treatment, and many suffered shrapnel injuries, Mariupol City Council said. World at 8. Keep out Obama, and that goes for the UN as well. Let sleeping dogs lie and concentrate on ISIS. I love the pot calling the kettle black. Very true in this case. US troops heading to Middle East to train Syria rebels so they can join ISIS. Some 100 US troops to arrive in the region in the next few days to set up training sites for moderate rebels, Pentagon says. Pentagon says a second wave of several hundred trainers will deploy in the next few weeks. The first advanced detachment of US troops responsible for training moderate Syrian opposition forces, is there any such thing, will begin arriving in the Middle East in the next few days, a US Department of Defense official has reported. Admiral John Kirby, the Pentagon press secretary, said the troops, mostly special operations forces, were authorised last week and will begin arriving early and will begin arriving in countries outside Syria in the coming days, with a subsequent wave of several hundred military trainers following in the weeks thereafter. The US focus in the campaign against the armed Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, group has been mainly on Iraq, with the exception of a large number of airstrikes to support Kurdish fighters trying to prevent the takeover of the Syrian town of Kobane near the Turkish border. He said the advanced element of US forces headed to establish training sites amounted to fewer than 100 troops. They're going to take a look at what's there and prepare for further deployments, Kirby said. A second wave of several hundred trainers will deploy in the next few weeks, the Admiral said. Kirby said last week that several hundred foreign military troops were also expected to act as trainers, including forces from the host countries. He said that active recruitment of Syrian trainees had not started, although US military officials have been discussing the matter with Syrian rebel groups. US officials have said if the current momentum continues, training could begin in the spring, with the first trainees returning to Syria at the year's end. Officials plan to train 5,000 Syrian fighters a year for 3 years. Thought for the day: Nationalists and Islam, but not together. Well, that is a thought, isn't it? But rest in peace, listeners, the hint is in the title, not together, and I'll be commenting on the two separately today. First is the nationalist slot, and I'm talking about the demonstration that did or did not occur in Dover this last Sunday. Now, I've been on demonstrations with the BNP until my last year of membership and have noticed one salutary thing. Nationalists, bless them, cannot organise a piss-up in a brewery. If we could, or had done so in the past, we would have been in government now. Sad, but true. The reason is, for the last several years in the BNP, and certainly in the fringe groups like the EDL and the National Front, administration and communications have been non-existent. The web now has taken over from any formal or trained admin, and in the case of the Dover escapade, members of the BNP advertised the actual meeting place to millions of people who are, probably, virulent anti-patriot and anti-nationalist. Thence the slightly larger turnout of the antis compared to the pros. But of course the local papers reported what they're told to report, in that a woman with a child had to be escorted out from a pub, when in fact it was all the nationalist female turnouts who were kettled into that pub by the plods to keep them safe from the anti-protesters, who are of course allowed the full run of any town, whilst the patriots are, if they turn up, kettled or diverted in some way. Now, this is why, when organising a demo, you need to be really tuned up on how to, first of all, get people to keep their word and attend, make arrangements for their travel, and keep communications up between splinter parties so that the appropriate numbers are achieved. From the BNP end, this has not been done for years. The EDL had been funded in the past and organised by a woman who's seen the vast numbers of buses are laid on and demonstrators arrive to do just that, demonstrate. The National Front have never had much of a female presence in admin, and that shows. The one thing a woman can do, if organised, is organise a demo or meeting to achieve the aims it was meant to do. The BNP had Michaela, and she was the last of the independent staff, and she could organise. But nationalism is not a female thing, and the various faux pas and missed demos reflect that. People don't turn up when they say they will, venues get altered at the last minute because some idiot has told someone else, everyone seems scared witless of the UAF, who are nothing more than a bunch of unwashed fascist thugs happily backed by the plods and the establishment, and it would seem members of the public and media, and if you face them you will see exactly what I mean. On a tabletop in Guildford some years back, we were all physically attacked by young students who thought they were taking the place of Mel Gibson in Being Free from Oppression, and how I kept my knees from bollocking the filthy young scrote who was singing or yelling in my face, I really don't know. But the plods, of course, did nothing, and a stupid bitch from the nearby church came out and took the yobs in because we were nasty people. So in reality, the Brits don't need the UAF when they have ordinary citizens who are quite capable of standing up for immigration, the EU, Muslim sexual grooming and the many more hate crimes committed in this country in their name. In fact, I've thought of a joke. Why don't you get young Muslim males in the Take Me Out show, which has started again on TV? On ITV. Answer, because the girls are too old. Oh. Ha ha. Right. But in reality, although we are compared to Nazis, they wouldn't have been seen dead at some of the second-rate nationalist demos I've attended or seen. Badly dressed and illiterate yobs, and they are the antis, to say nothing of our lot. Certainly, unless we nationalists can come up with thousands of supporters, all standing silently in front of Buckingham Palace, wearing signs which say, "Je suis patriote," or get women in their right place as admin and communication people and get some order into the various groups going in on their own, nationalist demos are not going anywhere, let alone a proper report on them. All the public will get is lies, lies and more lies, and the problem is they won't know the difference. Now, the question of Islam, whilst in itself is a huge problem, I have been reading the reports on Burma or Myanmar. Now, I don't care, I'm calling it Burma, like I still call Mumbai, Bombay and Sri Lanka Ceylon. Now, whilst I believe in my country and will protect it to the last, one still cannot ignore the fact of history that England and its various governments have always promoted Islam in some very odd way. I'll read a few historic facts for you to illustrate this. The country was colonised, this is Burma, by Britain following 3 Anglo-Burmese wars, 1824-1885. British rule brought social, economic, cultural and administrative changes. With the fall of Mandalay, all of Burma came under British rule, being annexed on 1st of January 1886. Throughout the colonial era, many Indians arrived as soldiers, civil servants, construction workers and traders, along with the Anglo-Burmese community, dominated commercial and civil life in Burma. Rangoon became the capital of British Burma and an important port between Calcutta and Singapore. So you can see that with the spread of British colonialism, we brought, or they followed, colonial rule to Burma and Islam, and took the form of Bengali Muslims, mainly from Bangladesh, from 1886, and became the Rohingya. Now, the UN are making a big thing of the fact they are being persecuted, and frankly it flies in the face of common sense. The Burmese government have adopted what the European governments and the EU have failed to adopt because it would not divide and conquer various states, which is in the plan. That is, they do not, along with India, Pakistan, China and the Arab states, give out citizenship on a whim, wheedle, whine or bribe. Those countries attempt to discourage massive immigration from other countries, including Europe. They don't want to become European or Christian, they want to, quite rightly, retain their own cultures and religions, despite human rights, amnesty and other money-making second-rate so-called charities. The Rohingya are Muslim and that makes them different, and as we know, Islam is not a religion of peace and acceptance of other people's religions or lifestyles. They have become a burden and a nuisance to the Burmese. One of the kick-offs of the Troubles was that a year ago a Muslim was accused of rape in one of the villages, and the villagers, unlike our own people, would not put up with it and burnt the perpetrator's house to the ground, and I believe some of the family were killed. Up went the cry from the Rohingya community that they were being persecuted because of their religion. The usual people got involved, namely the Muslim-run UN, and a Buddhist monk told some female messenger she was a whore, and I think he was right. For too long the Western world has courted the Muslims like they never courted the Jews. Well, I'm talking mainly about Europe here, not the US, who is still conducting a love affair with them in the media, of course. It seems tough, but the world cannot be wrong. Wherever you get Islamic communities, for however long and however large, trouble with a capital T is never far behind. Islam is a religion of the desert and of nearly 1,000 years ago. If all the bulk of the oil which the Western world needs so badly had not been in Muslim countries, they would still be sitting in their tents arguing, and that might have been a better thing for all concerned. But it was, and they have spread themselves all over the world, especially since the last war, where migration seems to be the name of the game. You tell me which country has been improved since Muslim immigration took and is still taking place. I bet you can't. Think of one. The media, of course, when Islamic trouble kicks off in any place, immediately blame the indigenous peoples and have many expensive inquiries and court hearings as to why it happened, and ignoring the outcome of exactly why it happened. So Islam's friend is the West, and now we are paying the price of choosing the wrong side. The Burmese are not backing down. They're too proud of their own culture and heritage to keep putting up with what are in essence migrant workers who've been living there a hell of a long time. But look at it this way, the Jews were in Germany 800 years and didn't cause much trouble until they took over the economic situation and turned communist in the 1920s and 30s. And look what happened to them. Citizenship should not be given to anyone as a matter of course. We have cheapened the title in this country, and I don't care if they're born here or not. That is why their mothers come over here to qualify for something that they do not deserve by virtue of just being born over here. And the Burmese and other Eastern nations have the right idea. To each his own, and the Rohingyas should have left and gone to their spiritual home many years ago, as, unlike our Muslims who get everything on a plate, including respect, which they do not deserve, the Burmese do very little to encourage anyone who isn't Burmese or Buddhist to stay. We now have genocide allegations and crimes against the Rohingya people. The Rohingya people have consistently faced human rights abuses by the Burmese regime that has refused to acknowledge them as Burmese citizens, despite some of them having lived in Burma for numerous generations. The Rohingya have been denied Burmese citizenship since the enactment of a 1982 citizenship law. The law created three categories of citizenship: citizenship, associate citizenship and naturalised citizenship. Citizenship is given to those who belong to one of the national races such as Kachin, Kaya, Karenni, Karen, Chin, Burman, Mon, Rakhine, Shan, Kaman or Zerbadai. Associate citizenship is given to those who cannot prove their ancestors settled in Myanmar before 1823, but can prove that they have one grandparent or pre-1823 ancestor was a citizen of another country, as well as people who applied for citizenship in 1948 and qualified for the laws then. Naturalised citizenship was only given to those who have had at least one parent with one of these types of Burmese citizenship or can provide conclusive evidence that their parents entered and resided in Burma prior to independence in 1948. The Burmese regime has attempted to forcibly expel Rohingya and bring in non-Rohingyas to replace them. This policy has resulted in the expulsion of approximately half of the 800,000 Rohingya from Burma, while the Rohingya people have been described as among the world's least wanted and one of the world's most persecuted minorities. Rohingya are also not allowed to travel without official permission, are banned from owning land and are required to sign a commitment to have no more than 2 children. As of July 2012, the Myanmar government does not include the Rohingya minority group, classified as stateless Bengali Muslims from Bangladesh since 1982, on the government's list of more than 130 ethnic races, and therefore the government states they have no claim to Myanmar citizenship. So we, the Brits, have caused most of this particular trouble in Burma, as indeed we let the Muslims get away with murder, literally, in India during the time of partition in 1947. The rest of Europe turned a blind eye during the Bosnian civil wars to the actual plight of the non-Muslims, and don't kid yourselves, they all lived together quite peaceably under Marxist rule, because everyone lives quietly under Marxist rule, because if not, you're killed. Simples. What is it with us? It was Islam that started black slavery in the first place, and our greedy Dutch, French and English made the most of transporting them out to what were then our colonies. But the root cause was Islam, and indeed many of the African tribes who converted sold their own. Now America has a huge problem, not only with the descendants of these slaves, but millions of newer arrivals as well, all caused by Islam, us and greed. The West Indies is a prime example. Sugar and bananas, and all the indigenous Indians were killed off, and the West Indies is now black in total. South America not only had the blight of the Spanish, who were never nice abroad, but black slaves as well. I rest my case. It is Islam and the Europeans who have buggered up the world so far, and I just hope they don't keep allowing this religion to spread by virtue of not doing anything to stop it because it's racist, non-humanitarian, anti-religious or whatever. You show me an ISIS killer put down his machete or gun and refuse to kill fellow Muslims and non-Muslims because he's part of a peaceful religion, and I will publicly eat my hat. Like the greatest thing the devil has done in making us believe he doesn't exist is the way Islam has made us believe it is a religion of peace. R.I.P. maybe. And finally, 2 for 1 Day Monday. A great Irish text message. Paddy texts his wife. Mary, I'm just having one more pint with the lads. If I'm not home in 20 minutes, read this message again. You love it, don't you? Woman blocks traffic with naked cardboard men. What she tells the cops is priceless. Yesterday I had a flat tire on the interstate, so I eased my car over to the shoulder of the road, carefully got out of the car and opened the trunk. I took out 2 cardboard men, unfolded them and stood them at the rear of my car, facing oncoming traffic. They looked so lifelike you wouldn't believe. They're in trench coats exposing their nude bodies and private parts to the approaching drivers. But to my surprise, cars started slowing down looking at my lifelike men, and of course traffic started backing up. Everybody was tooting their horns and waving like crazy. It wasn't long before a state trooper pulled up behind me. He got out of his car and started walking towards me. I could tell he was not a happy camper. What's going on here? My car has a flat tire, I said calmly. Well, what the heck are those obscene cardboard men doing here by the road? I couldn't believe that he didn't know, so I told him. Hello, those are my emergency flashers. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.